So if you couldn't tell, my favorite movie is Lord of the Rings. Have I got anyone else here who loves Lord of the Rings? That's not enough hands, but there are hands and we take those. That's great. What are some people's favorite movies? Let's hear some suggestions. At the back, yes. Mamma Mia. Great choice, great choice. Love me some good ABBA. Anyone else? Yes. Baby Driver. Good movie, great movie. Great, yes. Pirates of the Caribbean. All I'm hearing is bangers. This is great. Lauren, yes.
The old classic.
Yes, I mean, we're talking 12 Dancing Princesses. We're talking Princess and the Pauper. Like, come on, guys. We're talking about quality films here. I know too much Barbie. But there's something about these sorts of movies, right? Especially for me, Lord of the Rings. Not Star Wars The Last Jedi, but every other Star Wars. And Indiana Jones. I grew up on these stories. I grew up on these movies. Just these tales of these grand adventures, heroes and galaxies and villains and these incredible stories. There's something within us that is drawn to these stories of old, right? There's something about us that loves living these journeys through the characters that we read, see, and hear about. There's something about these stories that makes us want to see what happens, that makes us root for the good guys, that makes us want to be a part of the story. We all love a good story, and we all love the idea of a journey, of the hero winning, of this character going on a quest, and throughout everything that happens, he ends up being victorious, he ends up learning something. There's something within all of us that appeals to that, right? That is drawn to that. No one likes a story with a bad ending. No one likes a story where the villain wins and that's it. We're drawn to these stories where the hero triumphs. There's something innate within us that is drawn to that. And so I want to ask you on this idea of stories, what's your story? What does your story look like if it was played out in a movie like Lord of the Rings? What would your story of your life look like if it was written in a book? Would it be a grand adventure? A tale with damsels in distress and incredible victories and really funny scenes? I don't know. Would it be a bit dark? Would it be a bit dull? Would it be boring? What would your story look like? I think it's kind of cool to reflect on our lives and think about the journey that we've been on, right? Think about all the things we've done, all the choices we've made, and to think about this kind of story that it would be. You know, we're launching this series called A Better Story. And it's a church-wide series. The main church has been doing it as well, and we'll be starting it here. And over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be looking at this idea of a better story. And we're going to be comparing the story of the Bible, the story of Christ and Christianity, and comparing that story to the secular story. Now, what we mean when we're using the word secular is worldly, right? And I don't like creating an us and them mentality of Christians and the world. But it's kind of that idea of the thoughts and the ideas of society that go against the stories, the ideas, and the values of Christianity. And it's obvious that we live in a secular world, right? It's obvious that we live in a world that is quite against God and quite for this idea of secularism, of modernism, of just worldliness, right? We kind of see this story or this narrative that says, well, what is, considered normal for most people is you'll go through school, you'll do some reckless and wild stuff in your youth and maybe do a few things that you shouldn't. You'll get married, you'll get a full-time job, you'll get a pay rise, you'll earn lots of money, you'll have kids, you'll retire, you'll settle down, you die. And that's it. That's life. That's the secular story. The story that doesn't really have much point. It doesn't really have much purpose. There's not really much going for it. We've seen the statistics of mental health and all this stuff that's pretty alarming. It's becoming normalized for young teens to be diagnosed with depression and anxiety. That's almost an expectation. What's that? How can we fall into the idea that this is the story that we're supposed to live? But actually, when we read the Bible and when we get to know Christ, we actually begin to realize, no, there's a better story. There's a better story than what your friends, what the world, what society would have you believe is best for you. There's a better story than the one that is literally you just living, you pay your taxes and you die. There's a better story. And there's a lot of hope in that. And so we're going to be unpacking that over the next couple of weeks, looking at what it looks like to live out this better story. And we're going to be looking at different themes. And this week we're going to start right from the beginning, and we're going to be talking about creation. We're going to be talking about how we are created for a better story. And we're created by a God who loves us. And so on this idea of creation, I've got 3 points for us today. Why do I have 3 points? Because I'm a good Baptist preacher, and any good Baptist preacher has 3 points. That's just the rules. I didn't make them, I'm sorry. But the first point about how we are created for a better story is that we are created in his image. I'm sure this is something that you've heard over and over again, right? We're created in his image. This shouldn't really be something new, and if it is, all it essentially means is that we are created in the image of God. When God created us, he created us in his likeness. We are created, as the Latin would say, imago Dei, in the image of God. You know, I'm going to talk about a few stories today because we're talking about a better story, so why not? That just makes sense, right? And I love a good steak. Does anyone else here love a really good steak? What the heck? I see 2 hands. This is unacceptable. Are you serious? Come on, guys. Who likes a good steak in the house? Come on. Are you telling me we haven't got some steak fans in the house? I love me a good steak. Get me a porterhouse, medium well, medium rare, however the heck you like it. Pop some Diane sauce over the top with all-purpose seasoning. Give me some chips on the side. I'm done. I love a good steak, and a lot of the time I'll invite friends over, and I just like to cook dinner with them. Why? Because neither of us know what on earth we're doing because we can't cook, and it makes it really fun. The food's not fun, but the experience sure is. I invited a friend over and we said, you know what, let's do something different. Let's not go for steak this time. We decided to cook homemade pizzas. Have I got some homemade pizza fans in the house, right? Yeah, now we're talking. Okay, this is good. We love a good homemade pizza, and I had some last night actually, and it's just great, right? And we were getting so excited. We're like, mate, we are going to load our pizzas with as much meat as humanly possible. We're talking ham. We're talking turkey. We're talking salami. We're talking other meats that I can't really think of because I only really know the 3 on pizza. But like, it was stacked. And like cheese as well is important. And tomato sauce. So we went out to Coles and we got all these ingredients. We got all the ingredients. Like, mate, this is going to be some of the yummiest pizzas we've ever had. We get home. We turn the oven on. We get the trays out, put the baking powder down. Baking paper, not the baking powder. The baking paper down. I don't know if you're making pizza with baking powder. Is baking powder even a thing, or did I just have a stroke? It is a thing? Oh, yes, let's go. But we get everything prepared. And I put the tomato sauce in my hand, and as I go to look, I realize I've forgotten a crucial part of the homemade pizza. We forgot the pizza base. Which is a bit important, I think. When making a pizza, you kind of need the pizza. And so we just had nothing to go off. And of course, we weren't just going to put tomato on nothingness and just have it sit there. No, we went to Coles and we decided, actually, no, we're too slow to get a pizza base, so we just had Macca's for dinner instead, as any sensible teenager would do. But we made a mistake, right? We weren't prepared enough, and in trying to create this amazing dinner, we made a mistake, and it kind of ruined things. And you know, sometimes I feel like we can kind of get this idea of ourselves that we were created as a mistake. That with all of our flaws and imperfections, that God must have made a mistake when making me. That he's made other people so perfect, so beautiful, so wonderful, and yet here I am, me. Surely God made a mistake. You know, if we believe that we're created in his image, and if that's what the Bible tells us, then we've got to realize that no part of God's creation was a mistake. It's not like he spent 6 days creating, on the 7th day he slept, and while he was sleeping he realized, dang it, I shouldn't have slept because I still had more work to do on Ben. Well, sucks for him. No. God doesn't make mistakes. And that definitely applies for his creation. In everything we see, from the galaxies to the trees to the waters to the animals to us, in every part of us, He made no mistake. As much as we may feel like a mistake, we've got to understand that we've actually been perfectly designed. That every part of us, he's actually created with intention and with the intention to glorify him. There's this popular verse in Psalm 139. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of it. It's very common. It reads like this. It's, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that well." I still remember in prep at City Point, they'd have these Bible verses that they turned into songs. And that verse, "I am fearfully and wonderfully made," I remember over and over again, we just sing that in prep. And it still remains for me this day. But do we actually believe that? That we are wonderfully made? Do we really believe that we're created in the image of God who has designed us so beautifully, wonderfully, with every intent? I don't think we do. I don't think I do a lot of the time. But it's the truth. That we were created in the likeness of a God who made no mistake with us. Even though we may feel like a mistake, we've actually got to realize that no. Even every part of me, whether it's physical or whether it's even beyond that. This isn't just talking about body image, right? You may ask, well, God, why? You must have made a mistake because why am I so awkward? Why am I so annoying? Why am I so loud? Why am I so shy? Why am I so bad at public speaking? Why can't I figure out math? I don't know. But we look at these parts of our personality and we criticize a God who made no mistake in making us. We've actually got to learn to fall in love with ourselves in knowing that I'm actually who I am because God made me that way. Not because he made a mistake, not by chance, right? But by his design. Because the secular story would have you believe, this worldly story would have you believe that who you are isn't enough. That actually to fit in, to be the perfect you, to have the right image, you've got to wear the right clothes, you've got to behave the right way, you've got to talk the right way. And the secular story would have you believe that you've got to keep changing and changing and changing, but you're never going to be good enough. Because at the end of the day, we're all just mistakes, right? None of us are meant to be here, we're just here by chance. But there's a better story. There's a story that says you're not here by chance, you're not who you are by mistake, but actually every part of you was designed by a God who loves you and has so intricately created you from the very core of who you are, and he loves you. And if he loves you, you can love yourself as well. And other people can learn to love you too. You're created in the image of God. And that's a better story. We're not only created in the image of God, we are created as his children. Created as his children. This isn't news as well. In fact, most of these points you've probably heard before, right? You're going to see this through the Bible, you've heard it in sermons. I get it. But there's a difference between knowing and believing. There's a difference between hearing it and accepting the truth of that in your heart. And so I want to talk about the fact that we're created as his children. Story time again. Who here loves Lego? By a show of hands, right? Is Lego still a thing? Yes? Good. I'm not getting too old. This is great. But I'm telling you, when I was young, I loved Lego. Like for a solid 10 years, when it came to Christmas time, it was the only thing I wanted. I just wanted these awesome Lego pieces. And I find it funny how there's two groups of people who like Lego, right? You got the people who love the sets. They love buying the things and following the instructions to every small detail and then creating this wonderful thing from it. And then you've got the animals on the other side who literally just get this box full, Max, I'm talking about you, a box full of just random pieces and just create whatever the heck they want. Have we got any people like that in the room? Wow, yeah, well, my childhood sucked then, obviously. And look, it's neither here nor there, and Max had a better imagination than I did, and so he was, able to create this awesome stuff from Lego, and I didn't have an imagination, so I had to follow instructions. But I loved these awesome sets, right? Whether it was spaceships or buildings or sick-ass vehicles from Star Wars, I don't know. I loved getting these sets, following the instructions, and creating this beautiful thing from it. But you see, as I grew older, I found the difficult thing was I'd create these amazing sets of Lego, right? This awesome stuff. But then what do you do with it? You either have to stick it up somewhere for everyone to see, or to put it away, you've just got to break the thing apart and shove it in a box. And so I ended up getting to the point where I had all these Lego sets, all of this awesome stuff, and I couldn't rebuild it. Because all of these pieces from all these different sets were all just in one box. It was impossible to find the pieces again. And so it was the sort of thing where you'd build it once, you'd play with it, and you'd just put it away. You weren't able to play with it again. And this is an idea that has actually resembled God for a really long time. This idea that God is a God who created the heavens and the earth and created us, and then just said, yeah, no, you're right, and kind of just left us to our own devices. This idea, right, this idea still exists today in the secular world. Still, a lot of people who can't quite make sense of things are of the belief that, well, God created the earth, but he's just not around anymore. And this idea started in what we'd call the age of reason, hundreds of years ago, where science was on the rise. They were beginning to make sense of so many things. Gravity, electricity, all of that stuff, you name it. Like, well, hold on, we can actually figure everything out. We're smart. We can figure out how the world works. The only thing they couldn't figure out was creation, how we came to be. And so to make sense of that, they said, well, we can't figure out creation, so that has to have been God. But we don't need him anymore, right? We've made sense of everything we've developed as it is. And so this age of reason created this thought that still exists and permeates throughout our society today that says God created us and he left us. He created the earth, but he just sits back and watches things happen. But actually, if we're created as his children, if we're created by a father, then we've got to understand that a father won't leave his children. And there's actually a better story to be found in the Father's heart for us. He has a Father's heart for us. And this can be a difficult topic to talk about, I know. Because not everyone has a father. Not everyone has a good father. Maybe people have had fathers who's left them. Maybe they've never had one. Maybe you don't have a father who loves you. And I'm sorry. I know that sometimes this can be a really difficult thing for us to talk about, right? It's the beautiful thing about our God, that even in the midst of what we may have experienced, his Father's heart for us is so beautiful. A father doesn't look at their newborn baby and says, oh yeah, that's not bad, that's all right. No, a father looks at their newborn baby and says, that's mine. That's mine. And they are just filled with such love and care. That's the Father's heart for you. He doesn't leave his creation. He doesn't put it aside. But actually, when he created you as his child. Romans 8 talks about this. It says that we are adopted into sonship and that we are no longer slaves. It's up there if you want to read through it. It does not make you slaves, but the Spirit you receive brought about your adoption to sonship. This isn't an idea of God whipping us, telling us what to do, and we have to do as he says. No, this is a God who loves us and cares for us so deeply because we are his creation. We are his children. One of the closest friends I have recently asked me, how can God be proud of me? How can God be proud of me? How can this God, so grand, so majestic, so amazing, so perfect, be proud of someone as broken as I am? Yeah, that's a good point. It doesn't make sense for a God as perfect and loving as he is to be proud of the times that I've betrayed him, the times I've backstabbed him, the times I've walked away. You know, Jesus, he paints for us this beautiful image in the parable of the prodigal son. When this prodigal son, he takes his father's inheritance, he says, I don't need you anymore. And he spends it all on rubbish. And he completely says, I don't need you, I don't want you, I don't love you. And when he realizes he wants to come home and he needs the father, Is the father there standing at the door saying, oh, it took you long enough? The father runs to him. The father sees him from ages away. He says, finally, you're home. That's the father's heart for you. Because you are his son. You are his daughter. I don't care what you've done, the amount of things you've betrayed him with, the amount of times you've turned your back on him. Guess what? He still runs after you. He's still proud of you. He still loves you. Because his father's heart cannot help but love his children. Love his creation. The secular world will have you believe that he doesn't, that he's left us, that he's not here anymore. But we know a better story. A better story says that we are worthy of his love. That he loves us and he cares for us and that he'll never leave us. It's a better story. So we know that we are created in his image. We are created as his children. And we are created with purpose. This word purpose, we throw it around a lot, and it's a scary point of conversation and topic. By a show of hands, who here has been confused at one point in their life with the concept of calling? When you hear the word calling, you've just been like, what the heck? What is my calling? What is a calling? Huh? That's a lot of us, I'm sure of it, and it's definitely me. And I think we can get so caught up in this idea that the purpose we were created for can be so hard to find, right? Because that purpose is going to be found in the right uni degree, or the right job, the right career, the right promotion, the right position. That's going to be where my purpose is. I've just got to do the right things to get to that end goal. There's a truth to that. And there's a truth that God has created you with certain gifts and abilities to do a special something here on the earth. But it's not our purpose. Os Guinness, a theologian who wrote this book, The Call, when he was writing about calling, he says, your vocation, your work, the stuff that you choose to do with your life, that's secondary. That's a secondary calling. He said, yeah, of course you're going to be called from Christ to go out into the world, right? To make disciples, to be a light, to be an example of God's goodness in your workplaces and your homes. Absolutely. He said, but your primary calling, your first and foremost calling, it's not actually being called from Christ, it's being called to Christ. Your first and foremost primary calling in this life is to be his son. It's to be his daughter. That's it. We were created with the purpose of knowing our Father in heaven and simply living out our lives as the best children we can be. Isn't that simple? And isn't that beautiful? Doesn't that take all of the hassle out of knowing what degree I have to go into? Doesn't it take all the hassle of developing these skills out of the picture and knowing, well, actually, God, I'm just going to be the best child I can be. I'm just going to love you as best as I can. Because we are called to Christ. And the beautiful thing is that when we figure that out, when we actually get to know God more and more intimately each day, in return, we get to know more about ourselves. We get to know more about what we're here for. We discover our purpose in that. He just created us to know him. As any good father would. He just wants us to love him. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be anything grand, anything spectacular. But actually in just devoting your life to him, loving him day in, day out. Because a secular story would have you believe that life is meaningless. Right? We're just here as a result of some big bang. We evolved and we're here now, and we just got to make the best of the life we have. We don't know why we're here. Really, we just got to be a generally good person. Do as the government tells us to. Earn a decent amount of money, retire and die. That's the story. there's a better story. There's a better story that says you have purpose. That actually you're not here by an accident. You're here with a meaning. God wants you here. God has placed you here. I know a lot of the time we don't feel like we have much purpose, right? I do. There have been many times where I've been like, what am I doing here? What's the point of all of this? And I get it. But there's a better story to be found in Christ. There's a better story that says you weren't created by mistake. That you weren't created you weren't created by chance and you've just happened to become the way you are. No. There's a better story that says you created exactly as He designed you and intended you to be. And that you can be loved and that you are beautiful. We don't have to believe the story that says that that we are worthless. That we deserve to be abandoned and left behind. That no one loves us, no one cares for us. But there's actually a better story that says we were created by a Father who will not leave His children. Created by a Father who can't help but love on those who He loves so much. It's us. We don't have to believe the story that says life is purposeless and meaningless. There's a better story that says, no, I have purpose. I have breath in my lungs by the grace of God. And I'll use that to glorify Him. Because that's why I'm here. That's what I was created to do. We were created for a better story. And maybe you haven't been living that story. Maybe you've been living out that story that the secular, worldly world would have you want, right? That says I've got to change myself. That says I've been abandoned and left behind. That says, what's the point? Maybe you're living that in some way or another. You don't have to live it anymore. This better story, this new story can start today. From today, you can begin a new story that says you are loved, you have worth, you have purpose, because you are the Father's creation. And that means something. In fact, it means a lot. Why do we bow our heads and close our eyes in this space? I know that there are those of us in this room who have been living that story. We haven't been going towards Christ, but we've been listening to the voices of everything else in the world. We haven't been feeling loved, have been feeling worth. We believe, how could a God love someone like me? How could He create something like me? I know that there are those who are living that story. But I want to give you the opportunity this morning, from this day forward, to choose a better story. To choose Christ's story for your life. The story of the past doesn't matter at all. But will you live a better story? If you want to make that decision in this place and say, I want to live a better story. I want to live with purpose, with worth, with love, and valued. If you want to live your life from this point on being called to Christ, live your life just knowing Him day in, day out, coming closer to Him. If you want to live that better story, why don't you raise your hand? If you want to live that better story, if you want to choose that, no, today I'm going to choose to follow Christ, why don't you lift your hand? Let's see that again. Thank you. Give you one more chance. If you want to say, I want to leave this old story, this old life behind and start anew. I want to turn a new page. God, I commit my life from this day on to you. Let's see that here. Why don't you lift your hand and say, that's me. Let's see that hand. God, you are such a good Father to us. You're the best Father. You are the perfect Father. God, we're sorry for the mistakes we've made. We're sorry that we've turned our back on you, that we've left you, we've betrayed you, we've run away. God, we thank you that you're not a God who's distant. You're not a God who's left us. But when you see us coming back, God, you run to us. And you welcome us home with open arms. And you say your new story, your better story starts today. Help us live the better story of your creation, God. Help us live a life that is called to you. When we see you running to us, help us run to you in return. Help us live for you day in, day out, and live a better story.